Pixel Sift is proudly sponsored by Audible. Audible is the premier audiobook store where you can pick up great books from a stack of different authors and read by some fantastic people such as Stephen Fry, who reads through the entire Harry Potter series. So if you're looking for Adventures of the Boy Wizard, The Boy Who Lived, you can check that one out. If you're up to date with your podcast for the week, why not chuck on a good audiobook? And you can pick up a 30-day free trial on us thanks to Audible by visiting audibletrial.com/Pixel Sift. You can grab yourself a free audiobook. You can play it on anything that's got a headphone port or a speaker and listen to the 180,000 titles that are available. So that's audibletrial.com/Pixel Sift. Hello and welcome back to Pixel Sift. Every episode we dig into the news of the world of games development and culture and discuss the topics that matter to you. My name is Gianni and I'm joined by my co-hosts Mitch and Scott. This week on the show we're also joined by Andrew Freeth from Juicy Cupcake. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
No worries, good to be here.
Andrew, we're looking forward to hearing all about your game, Brief Battles, a little bit later in the show. But before we do that, what else are we checking out today, Mitch?
Yeah, so for our first topic, we'll be looking at digital history, how some games are forgotten and others remain timeless.
Yes, and to finish off, we'll be talking about the exclusivity effect. Can the perception of games be affected by their platform's exclusive nature?
Good question, Scott. Let's find out, shall we, by jumping in.
Yeah, so games have been around now for a while and still in a very young form of media, and classics are starting to come out of the woodwork. One of these games' all-time greats is StarCraft, which released almost 20 years ago. With an HD remake around the corner, it does beg the question, how does a game become a timeless classic?
Well, the trick is, Mitch, is you just need to get a stack of Koreans to play it for 20 years, and then that's how it becomes a classic.
Oh, easy.
Easy done. So, Andrew, I'm sure you're writing that one down just for your upcoming game. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to think about why some games have that sort of cultural cut through that are able to sort of last the stretch of time. Some games only live on in the memories of others. I'm curious to think as to, why do we think it is, other than, having a huge sort of broad appeal, that these things are able to sort of continue on.
I think the aspect of competitive play really helped StarCraft in the sense that people were still involved and wanting more of the game throughout the years because they just played it competitive and took it so seriously in Korea and honestly in America too and the rest of the world. I know I was playing it up until recently as well. I mean, the original version, even though StarCraft 2 has existed for a while now, still like the original version.
I played it for so much longer than you would generally play a game, I guess, as far as it being in goes. But I mean, StarCraft is a kind of exception in its own. I think that was quite a stellar game, and it was a little bit ahead of its time as far as real-time strategies go, at least, I reckon.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting in that you look at something like Blizzard, which is a huge company which has heaps and thousands upon thousands of staff now that make these games sort of continue on, and they have really strong franchises and have done a really good job at kind of keeping those franchises alive and refreshing them as they kind of go through. But there's lots of games, we were talking about this a little bit earlier in the week, where StarCraft was early enough in the sort of gaming cycle that it was an early pioneer and was able to live for 20 years. But it was at that point where sort of internet was starting to become pretty prevalent, and a lot of people had internet in their houses, and I think that sort of had a big impact on the ability for it to be able to sort of live on and go past this,
Yeah, no, absolutely. StarCraft was one of the first games I ever played online, albeit through a very, very poor connection, and did not do very well. But I think it was like that and Total Annihilation were like my first online games. And like quite an experience. You go from playing yourself inside to playing other people, getting beaten by heaps of other people. I blame my internet connections, and it was a very important changing point, I think, for gaming culture.
Andrew, sorry, Mitch.
I think Blizzard's ability and willingness to keep supporting the platform as well. I believe StarCraft was patched as recently as a couple of years ago. So,
Oh, really?
so they were still patching it and still working on it and still dedicating resources to it for all this time.
That Brood War expansion had me going for another couple of years at least.
Yeah, I think, Andrew, I'm curious to see what you think about this, where, we have sort of this idea where something continues on for a long time and, has this sort of legacy. What do you think is the winning factor?
I think you guys have covered most of it. I think they were sort of pioneers in their time. And I think those really early quality RTS games really stood out, like Age of Empires alongside it. And they're a game that, like, even you can play competitively or you can play it by yourself for just a crazy amount of hours. Like, you might jump in there for an experience and you might be playing for hours, but you've only played 1 or 2 matches. So, like, there's always more that you can explore and you didn't expect, like, in there. So you kind of still want to come back to it. You can never really play enough. And I think, like, in that really tight experience that Blizzard delivered, like, you want to come back to it again and again. I think, you can still play it today and it still holds up against everything else out there. I think there's a few, like, there's not many games that can do it, but also you do kind of get those other local or other online multiplayer games that they do have that sort of endurance if they, I suppose you can, that's like, especially local multiplayer, like you could go back and you can play things on the SNES or you could play things recent like Overcooked, and I think those sort of things can kind of be timeless. You're not looking for a AAA aspect or something unique there. It's on a smaller scale, but I think if you're looking for like a local collection of games, they all kind of hold up pretty well together.
Absolutely.
Compared to some of the AAAs that die.
Is that a factor when thinking about making your own game? Is that having that sort of local aspect is a good way to keep it endure and making sure that it has a place in people's hearts?
I think there's a smaller market for that local aspect, and we've been always told, like, don't make a local multiplayer game because it's not going to make the sort of sales or reach the big market. But, like, I suppose my love and other people that I know that love that sort of game, that is part of why we really wanted to make Brief Battles and move forward in that scene, because it is a game that, say, in 10 years' time, someone might hopefully be sitting there playing and laughing with friends and family. So, yeah.
That's it. There's nothing quite wrong with local multiplayer, and we do hear this kind of talk of people getting pushed away from doing it for lots of valid reasons. But at the same time, a lot of the most accomplished kind of classic games are or do have the ability to be local multiplayer, like the StarCraft, like we we're just talking about, and as you said, the other RTS that was huge, Age of Empires. Both of them, StarCraft not yet, but both of them facing at least HD re-releases. You don't get that for many games, and I think a huge part of their success was the local multiplayer side of things. And it's not so much don't do local multiplayer. It's just if you're going to do it so it's going to be great. It's going to do it so it's going to be fun and lasting.
I think the prevalence of digital delivery has also helped a lot. Like, these patches can be pushed live, and some games can even be re-delivered. Have you ever heard of a thing called Intellivision? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, it's a really old console of some variety.
That was like Commodore 64 times.
Yeah, so it's a Mattel Electronics property when they made a video games console, and it was in 1979 when this thing came out. But in recently on the Xbox on the Xbox 360, they've released there was a thing called Intellivision Lives. And pretty much it was kind of like an arcade kind of ROM that you could put on your Xbox 360 and it would play a certain collection of these games.
That's great. I think gaming's been around for long enough. It's just got to the point where, sorry, the idea of like retro and whatever is really cemented in. I mean, look at what we've got in the market at the moment. There's heaps of your old retro consoles and whatever. And you've got the NES Classic Edition for one example. We're just at the right amount of time away from when games were first coming out and being amazing, that it's it's cool to look back on them, and people are going to start revamping them, and introducing it to the Xbox 360 platform and console. That's pretty amazing.
I think there's always going to be your big titles that are going to make this transition. It's going to be no problem for those, but there's going to be passionate people out there who will actually be keeping these older titles together. People who want to go out and collect every single Nintendo Entertainment NES game that comes out, every SNES game that comes out, all of these things that existed in a time before the internet, so they aren't easily transferable onto other media sources. And some of those companies may not even exist anymore, or the people that are working there may not even exist. So who owns the IP of that, and how do you re-release it if the people doing that thing are all spread across the world or working in different areas?
There are a bunch of really good websites that do cater to like saving abandonware, like Game Graveyard and Game Nostalgia and Abandonia. So, like, you know, like you said, there's a lot of people out there that are those people that want it to live on.
And there are people interested in this history. Like you and I, Johnny, you and I had an argument a couple of months ago about the origin of Sega. Remember that?
Yeah.
And we were like, I said, Sega is actually an American company. And you said no.
Didn't like that.
And then Johnny didn't like that. But Sega actually originated in Hawaii. They made pinball machines.
And then they moved over to Japan and made it huge. I think it's really interesting to see, but you know, I guess we'll see as they go along and what comes out of this. And there's always going to be more history to be discovered. Right now, though, we might jump into our next topic.
Did you know Pixelsive is available on other platforms? You can find previous episodes on iTunes, Pocket Casts, YouTube, and on the Pixelsive website.
Now we're joined by Andrew Freeth from South Australia's Juicy Cupcake. Andrew, I know you were practicing this before we jumped on the show, but can you tell us a little bit about your game, Brief Battles, for people who may not have come across it before?
Yeah, sure. So Brief Battles, it's a couch gaming platform fighter where you fight your friends with superpowered underpants. So these underpants will give you a variety of absurd combat powers. It's just a humorous social experience, great for catching up with friends. And I suppose I should paint a picture for those who are listening instead of viewing. Despite the underpants factor, it's still a family-friendly, cute game with like plump characters. It's not going to be like a little more seedy, like in Mount Your Friends kind of art style or something like that. So yeah, it can be taken a bit of a different way online sometimes without some accompanying artwork or gameplay.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, you go.
No, I was going to say the art style does a very good job to kind of paint it as something that can be accessible for everyone. But we were talking a little bit beforehand that it's a strong tradition of underpants-related media out there. Like we've got your Captain Underpants.
Yeah.
We've got your The Day My Bum Went Psycho that I remember.
It's very Australian.
It's very Australian, that one.
I think
toilet humour.
Yeah, it's a bit of toilet humour that everyone can enjoy on some level, no matter how old you are.
Andrew, how did you get to the point where you said, I'm going to make this game, and how did your team kind of come together?
So it was pretty interesting. We've been sort of this two-man team that we have. We've been just kind of like working on game jam ideas for the last few years to find that one project that we really wanted to continue with commercially. We ended up making this far too ambitious concept with this original character we had, Kevin. He was wearing like underpants and a cape, and he's running around being pudgy and cute and taking on this massive open world, seamless platformer adventure. And it was becoming pretty clear that was a bit too ambitious, but we did build sort of the lore and the art style around that. And it was the one thing that we're like, yeah, we want to continue this and do something with it. And we were kind of on the borderline between that or that sort of like multiplayer, the sort of gameplay interactivity that we created in a couch gaming experience, because we've always wanted to have a good couch game. So we ended up scaling it back into that. We had like 4 of that same character in his underpants running around battling each other, and we kind of got like the movement system right first and started looking at what sort of abilities they would need. And we just thought, yeah, we'll embrace the power of the butt and use your underpants for power. Yeah.
Embrace the power of the butt.
That's a tagline.
We're going to be using that.
Yeah, we'll take that. Thanks.
Just take that one quote. Andrew, you said you've been working on sort of game jam sort of stuff before you kind of came to this idea and worked from there. And you were telling us a little bit earlier on that you work a day job as well, and then you work a second day job making this game. How has that been sort of balancing between your normal work life commitments and then also this project that you're working on?
It's definitely been a struggle. I would say that in the earlier years we gave ourselves more of a life side of the balance as well, so we weren't going too crazy into it. But now that we've started sort of making those third-party agreements and looking at different platforms and releasing the launch, it's definitely taken more of our lives up in the end, I suppose, which it is a bit of a struggle and a strain. But family and friends have been supportive around us throughout it, and we're reaching that sort of end point now where it's starting to pay off. So it's been worthwhile in the end, and hopefully next year we can be in a comfortable position where maybe we're just spending the time required making the game and having actually a bit of a life around it as well.
Maybe a few games sitting on the couch of actually playing your game and enjoying it.
Definitely, for sure.
When you're talking about making kind of fun couch multiplayer games and that sort of experience we talked about before, what are some of the really important things that you've kind of learnt or you've kind of come across as you've been showing your game off and also putting it in front of other people?
I guess it's really been about making sure that people can pick up the game without any real struggle. So like we've kind of tried to make it so that we have only really shown sort of one classic battle so far, but we've made the controls sort of intuitive enough that you can master it and become amazing, or you can just really jump in and play and have a laugh. You can have little kids get in there and they can still find it sort of hilarious and enjoyable, and everyone still has a chance to do something. So you can use some of the more powerful underpowered skills, or you can jump in there with, say, your pant pound and just crush people with your butt, essentially. So like there's that sort of simplicity to it as well, that if people just want to do that sort of simple thing. And we've got some underpants themed game modes as well, which are more about the party side of it, I suppose, more of a party game rather than battling each other. So, but yeah, from taking it to events like PAX Australia, AvCon and RTX this year, it's definitely been interesting to see how people react, especially the characters as well. I think they're one of the things that we try to really hone in on, to have that sort of unique humor in them and that personality. They don't really have any voices or anything like that, but when you see, say, Professor Tubbins or Kevin or Sparrow, you will generally get people that sort of love their appearance and try and grab a hold of them and want to be those characters and argue over them when they're in the character select screen. That's the kind of thing we've been after, trying to build that sort of personality behind the characters without them even saying a thing.
So Andrew, we're speaking of your characters. Which one's your personal favorite?
Personal favorite? Oh, man. I would say Professor Tubbins. I think it's more of a favorite to not always play as him, or sort of maybe be battling him, but like people generally like always shout hatred at Professor Tubbins. I feel like whoever plays Professor Tubbins is usually the best player. The characters don't have any unique power themselves. It all comes from the underpants, so it happens on the fly. So you can't have someone that like steals that character, so they're going to be the best. Like you run into a match, and it's always going to be random. You like run towards some presents, and they'll give you a random pair of underpants, and that could change at any time because someone could be grabbing a new present, or someone could be running at you that suddenly has an ability that you didn't expect. Yeah, but Professor Tubbins, he's definitely always good.
Definitely up there.
I like Kevin. Kevin speaks to me.
What does that say about Mitch, Andrew? If Kevin speaks to him, what sort of player is he?
What's he saying?
All right. Kevin's confident, for sure.
It's got nothing to hide. One of the things I'm sort of wondering about with that sort of character design, in that you've got kind of, was it a conscious design decision to kind of keep them sort of vague and let players kind of fill in the gaps in terms of these storylines that they make for themselves, or is that sort of something that was born out of necessity because of you're a two-person team working in your spare time to make this game?
We kind of kept it simple in this aspect. We didn't really want to put a story behind brief battles as such. We have kept in mind some story and lore that we haven't announced, I suppose, because we will be bringing probably these characters, or maybe one of the characters, back into still a larger experience, story-driven experience in the future. So we've kind of just got the personality interfaces and letting people fill in the blanks for now. It also does reduce development time not having voices or anything like that in game, because there's some translation and stuff there where that would certainly take a hit, but I don't think it's really necessary within the game either. Most of the time in a couch co-op experience, I'll dismiss the sort of story or information about characters. Generally, like, you just want one that you're just like, that's cool, I'm playing as that, because in the end, you just got to jump in and want to start playing the game straight away without any real thought factor to anything else besides having fun.
You should just go for the best colour. That's what I always do. Anything with green, that's my colour. I'm going for that. Now, Andrew, if people want to find out a bit more information about the game, when is it going to be sort of available, or when are you aiming for it to be available? And where should people go if they want to check it out?
Yeah, sure. So at this point, we're aiming for an early 2018 release. It's a bit vague right now, but we'll announce more about that soon. And you should go to briefbattles.com to find any info, and you can get onto our social platforms from there as well.
And you'll find links to all of that stuff in the show notes of this show. Right now, though, we might jump into our final topic.
Pixel Sift. Pixel Sift. No, seriously, Pixel Sift. No, seriously.
Pixel Sift.
Platform-exclusive games and content are nothing new to the industry, but a post by Reddit user Commodore256 has got us thinking, does the exclusive nature of games like Horizon Zero Dawn and Zelda Breath of the Wild affect our perception and our experience? Scott, I know you've got some big thoughts about this idea.
I mean, yes, I do feel. I have a bit of story as far as this kind of thing goes. I mean, I was a Nintendo player for a long time, and it took me a little while to jump over to PlayStation, and it was Gran Turismo that did it, exclusive title. It got platinum, and I saved up all my pennies, saved up all my chore money and got that. But if it wasn't for Gran Turismo, I wouldn't have switched to PlayStation. It was super appealing and everything because it was like it kind of came out of the stalls, it smashed everything out. PlayStation was huge when it came out. But if it wasn't for Gran Turismo, I don't think I would have jumped ship. And similarly, as far as card games taking me wherever they wish, I very much considered buying the new Xbox because of the Forza.
Forza Horizon looks so good.
Yeah, right. Exclusivity and the fact that it's Australian. I'm a little bit,
that is pretty cool.
A little bit patriotic,
but
something like that anyway.
But Reddit user Commodore 256 mentioned that the fact that something is exclusive to a console or any platform might make someone's opinion of it, or might sway someone's view of it in a more positive light because they have invested more time and more money and more of this pretty much soul into the property.
Yeah, it's biased, and I completely understand that. So then Breath of the Wild is a perfect example. I already know, well, the only people that we know that own the Switch so far have bought it because of Zelda, and I don't think anybody would be buying it not for Zelda right now. And in doing that, you kind of commit yourself to it, and therefore, you don't want to admit if it was bad, which it's not. But none of you would be willing to, admit that it was poor and you made a bad decision. Basically,
it does seem like that would kind of influence.
You're too far in. You're too far committed.
Yeah.
Are you trying to say that there's a sunk cost in there, Scott? Is that what you're trying to kind of get at? That people are kind of, I've spent $500 on a Switch, I might as well love Zelda because that's the only option I've got.
I mean, no, because I think people would buy it for that, but subconsciously, maybe, yeah.
Andrew, what do you think about this thing? Does the exclusivity of a title impact how you feel about that particular title, or is it something that you think that sort of doesn't really matter as long as it's kind of available wherever?
I don't think it matters. I think it's fine in the end to be exclusive. Like, I'm sure major studios have valid reasons, probably more financial for that purpose. But and for indies as well, I think for exclusivity, they'll be doing it to get the benefits of partnering with one platform to maybe get some extra support and awareness behind them. But then, yeah, I do like multi-platform as well, I suppose. But I'm not sure if it does change. They definitely get more positive exposure if you do have an exclusive game from that platform. But yeah, I guess you end up getting the other win-win of the more awareness overall being multi-platform. I don't think it really stops press or anything being honest about games or their flaws. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed one. I don't think it's too much of a problem, but yeah, you definitely do get that positive boost from that one platform, and it's heavily weighted at that time when they first announced.
I think one of the things that I guess this user was trying to get at was does the factor of this sort of console tribalism that they kind of talk about, where people are like, I'm an Xbox player and I only play Xbox, or I'm a PlayStation player and I only play PlayStation.
Yeah.
Bring on my Nintendos, boys. Does that have an impact? And I wonder if they're thinking that maybe there is some inherent bias in the way that these reviews are being conducted, that people are calling from, a particular perspective. You know what? I wonder if someone from Nintendo Power might be slightly biased towards Nintendo titles. Who knows? Mm-hmm. I think the sort of operating things is slightly different depending on whatever that platform is. Personally, I think it's... this is one of these things that, perception is very difficult to understand, why some people think they bring their own sort of experiences to whatever it is, and they want to, apply those rules to the way that the world works. But yeah, I think, most people are usually professional enough and they play enough games, and, most people I know who are big into gaming will own multiple consoles.
I mean, as it stands, we're pretty different because we're journalists, right? Yeah, that's what we are. Yeah. And then I think we're pretty used to thinking pretty objectively. But yeah, who knows?
Absolutely, but I don't own an Xbox.
That's true.
So I
so Xbox can just get stuff.
Well, basically, do you know what? And as funny as that is the kind of mentality you have towards something that you don't have, because you're not gonna buy it. You're not gonna go out and spend this $500 to plus $100 on the games and the whatever that you already have a console that can do most of those. Maybe not that exact game, but all the other ones. So to kind of shun off that idea, you just kind of blasé say, bloody Xbox players, Microsoft, blah blah blah.
Yeah, Horizon Zero
Get
Dawn.
a PlayStation or something like that. Or,
Yeah.
Switch shoes.
Horizon Zero Dawn has made me look upon my PlayStation 4 quite fondly. Yeah.
Well, that's probably a good place to leave it, I think, Mitch, because we have run out of time for this episode. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. We can look forward to your game coming out a little bit in the future. Not that long now. It'll be 2018 before we know it.
Yeah, right.
Andrew, could we just grab that URL again for people who want to check out Brief Battles?
Do it.
Yeah, pretty easy. Just briefbattles.com. So, yeah, check it out.
Nice and easy, good SEO
Nice.
there. You can find out our website as well, and I will tell you that right now. And that website is www.pixelsift.com.au. We also have a bunch of older episodes. We have a live episode from Oz Comic Con from last weekend. If you didn't get a chance to pop down, you can watch it live and see the fantastic camera work that Scott did when he was putting it together.
You're
I
welcome.
know you guys were there.
So that's on Pixel Sift. But Mitch, if we want to find all episodes, where should people head to?
Yeah, as before, you can find them on our website. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, our podcast on iTunes, Pocket Cast, or using the RSS link on our page.
That's it.
And Mitch has told us all about our old episodes. And now, Scott, you're going to tell us about where people can find us on social media.
Find us at facebook.com/pixelsift, twitter.com/pixelsift, twitch.tv/pixelsift, and youtube.com/pixelsiftau.
That's it. We'll be back again this time next week for a Pixel Sift Plays.
Yep.
You can check out what's coming up on our Twitch page where we have the new events feature, so you can subscribe and
or
find
if you
out.
only like the show, which is I find that hard to believe, but if you only like the show, the next one will be on the 13th of April.
That's
Yep.
right.
Peace out. May your butt reign supreme.
Thanks, Andrew.